All right, welcome back. I hope you had a chance to rest just a little bit. And we are just about to start our next part. We heard in the opening of this conference today, we heard from two exciting speakers who showed us the potential of virtual states and a case of a virtual state in making. And I will hear more details from several more contributors in the panel with people that also have a lot of expertise and deep knowledge and deep understanding of what currently drives the transformation of virtual state. And also, I think it's a great opportunity to talk about what actually virtual states can give to the world. What are the opportunities? What is the offering? So we will have today three wonderful speakers. So we have Patri Friedman, who is the head of Seasteading Institute, the venture about which I heard many years ago, and I was excited that it's finally happening. And also the head of Pronomos Capital Foundation, that I think is investing in this new types of governance and new type of statehood. So we'll hear more about the work from Patri in a moment. We have Bahram Avazyan, who leads the creation of Pan-Armenian Network State. And we have Alex Tveit, who was also quite active in the beginning stage, who explores different dimensions of technology and the governance in various aspects of his work as a transformational potential of technology and the role of technology such as AI, blockchain in the addressing sustainability challenges. And Alex, I'm not sure if you have a network state project of your own, but you probably will think about one after this conference. All right, let's begin. And Alex, would you like to say a couple of welcoming words?
I think I'm grateful for these speakers for finding time to attend this conference, and I'm really happy about it and very excited to hear what they will say and what I can learn from them.
Thank you. So, Patri, maybe we'll begin with your contribution. Again, I'm really excited to know that seasteading is not only a theoretical concept. I know that you have quite a number of prototype attempts. And can you share with us what's your vision of the future, how you see it becoming real, what you do through the Institute and also through Pronomos, and what are the benefits for the world? What if your work, I hope it will be successful, what will it bring to all of us? Well, I think we need to unmute you. I'm sorry.
Hey, can you hear me? All right. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. So I guess what I've been doing for over 20 years now is working on a movement that I call competitive governance. It has a lot in common with virtual states. And my two main metaphors for all my work have been looking at government as a business, like looking at government as industry and states as companies in that industry and us citizens as customers. So that's one lens. And then the other is looking at laws and institutions like software code. I spent 10 years at Google, am a coder, and I think there's a lot of insight to be gained there. It's actually like a pretty tight isomorphism in the sense that like laws are a series of instructions that get executed, like they're algorithms and rules. And what I see with the governing industry is that it has this kind of huge problem, which is that there's no way to start new countries. Or at least there was kind of no approved way to start new countries. And that means that this is an industry with no startups. And if you have no startups, then of course you don't get innovation. to find new ways to do things, you have to try new ways to do things. And the way we do this, the way we get progress in most fields in tech is a small group of people get together, they have to start from scratch and design something new and see if people like it and test it and opt in and grow over time. And we're not able to do that. So I realized that what's needed is a way to make startup countries. And at first I had my own particular philosophy, my own type of society I wanted to live in, and that's what I started with. But I soon realized, wait a second, if I can unlock the potential to start new countries, then all kinds of different people with different ideas about a good life, about what type of society they want to live in, like what their values are, and different ideas about how to build that could actually all try it. All right, one of my mottos is let 1,000 nations bloom. And we'll see in practice what actually works by building it. My work is kind of all about how do we bring this stuff into the real world. And back in the early 2000s, traditional countries were not willing to work with us at all. Wasn't a thing. They weren't open to network states. There were certain trends I looked at, like the .tv and .to domain name sales, like economic citizenships, basically countries doing what I call commoditizing their sovereignty, and fragmenting it. I mean, I think one of the things that I have in common with the virtual statement with this idea of like unbundling sovereignty. Like, there's no reason that I should be getting my travel documents from the same organization that like runs the physical security of my country. It's the same organization that manage my health insurance. Like those, it's actually not, generally you don't get the best services by bundling. And so, I was just inspired by how can we enable countries to commoditize their sovereignty by letting us create new societies. And so I started working with seasteading, trying to build these new societies on the ocean. From the early 2000s, I got funding from Peter Thiel in 2007 to start the Institute. And the way that the law of the sea works, it's not a free-for-all like some people think, but it's this flexible virtual association where each ship has to register with a country. You fly their flag, and then it's like you're franchising their sovereignty, like your little floating embassy. So it's an incredibly flexible system where any ship can register with any country in the world. You can change your registration every year. Like, if we could do this on land, if like a city could just decide like which country it was under, like if we had like a virtual like feudalism, I feel like, I mean, my work would be done. We just go and and try new things and have the countries compete for us. So it's an incredible system, and it's exciting. It really fired up people's imagination. I got millions of people around the world thinking about this stuff. I got made fun of by the Colbert Report, top satire outlet in my country, which I wear as a badge of pride now. I started cutting little segments into my videos and talks. That was about 10 years ago. But the issue is that the ocean is just very, very difficult and expensive. And so what happened about a little over 10 years ago, starting with Honduras, is that countries kind of, they got the smell of this new way of doing things, this stuff that that a bunch of us identified very early. It kind of was the way that the world was going and the world went with technology and decentralization and all that. And small countries started realizing like, hey, we may be small, but there's actually this is a benefit. We're more like a startup. We can move faster and innovate more. And so, countries started doing that. Honduras changed their constitution to create the first program in the world for doing what's called charter cities. And a charter city is where a government, changes their constitution or passes legislation to enable a new kind of special economic zone where a business operates the zone and gets to write most of the laws. So the standard that was set, first by Dubai International Financial Center, then in Paul Romer's work and in Honduras, is that the zone gets to write all commercial law. So it has to follow the country's constitution and treaties, because you always have to when you're under its sovereignty. And in the Honduras case, they're criminal law. But then you get to write all commercial law. And for those who aren't familiar, just think everything that's not a crime. This is everything from medical regulations, stock markets, zoning, building codes, labor law, tort law, contract law, corporate law. It's almost everything. It's really amazing. And of course, it's much more financially feasible to build on land. And so that's been kind of my shift the last 10 years, is taking all this energy from people around the world who are excited about starting new societies and applying it on land. So I've just actually spent last weekend we have one of these kind of that's fully operating called Honduras Prospera on the island of Roatan in the Caribbean. And I and my fund, we've invested in 10 companies on 4 continents, trying to do this around the world. Africa is the main place where we have a bunch of different companies working with a bunch of different countries. But this one in the Caribbean, Prospera, it's the one that's launched and deployed. It's been out there for 4 years. And just last thing before I hand it over is that what's really worked out in Prospera is medical innovation. So I've been there 3 times in the past 4 months. The first time I got a gene therapy, not available anywhere else in the world, that increased my cardio capacity by 1.5 to 2 times in a week. Like a week later, suddenly my runs just got like 70% longer, like out of nowhere. For those of you who follow the longevity movement and know Brian Johnson, the influencer, he got this treatment last year, and I was just there a month ago with Balaji and Naval Ravikant, and Brian Johnson was there getting his dad this treatment because it's called follistatin, and it just turns a knob in your body to make you grow more muscle. And of course, a major cause of mortality in the elderly is that after a while you start losing muscle, and that becomes a big problem. A month ago, when I was there, I got my mouth bacteria killed and replaced with genetically engineered mouth bacteria that don't make lactic acid. No acid eating away your teeth, no cavities. So, I mean, you still have to floss, right? It doesn't do anything with like material being in there. It doesn't affect gum health. But as far as cavities, done. And then I just went there a week ago and I got, let's see if you can still see the scar. So that's the scar. I got a chip implanted in my hand. So it like runs along here. It unlocks my Tesla, and I can tap phones. It's swollen, so the reception isn't good. I have to get the right spot exactly, but about half the time I can get my business card to people by tapping their phones. It's supposed to get better as the swelling goes down, and it can do your one-time passwords, cryptographic functions, things like that. So that's really taken off at Prospera. It's super excited to be going there. They have a hotel resort and a bunch of villas, but their first apartment tower is opening in the next couple months. The Duna Towers. It's the tallest building on Roatan because the zoning limits all buildings to 6 stories, but Prospera writes their own building codes, their own zoning. So it's like a 13-story, 14-story tower. Yeah, so that's my work. And what I want to unlock for the world is if we can start new societies, then we can try new things, whether it's new legal systems, social systems, education, healthcare, political. My focus is on the self-governing part and things enabled by that legal autonomy. But in general, like we got to find new ways, and that means trying new things. And when the new ways are for how to run a country, like we have to actually be able to start autonomous new societies, or we can't find the new ways that will be, my goal is to find things that are as much better than constitutional representative democracy as it was better than the previous systems. I mean, 250 years ago, it was this amazing innovation. The Europeans thought America was crazy for trying this level of democracy. And now it's kind of like the industry standard system. But we've learned a lot in the last 250 years, and I know that we can do even better. So that's a quick intro to my work.
Well, that's great. Very nice to hear, and also very interesting. And I guess now over to Mr. Bahram Ayvazyan. If you could introduce yourself, introduce your project, the Pan-Armenian Network State, and in general, in your opinion, what do you think virtual states can bring to society and to us as people?
Hi everyone, thanks Alex, and thanks everyone for this wonderful opportunity. I'm happy to see you here, and thanks Patri for your intervention about, trying new things. Definitely, that's worth trying. And we are living in a very interesting era now, in a civilization transitional era now. So. Apparently, from the project name, it's clear that that mainly covers the Armenian component, like the Armenian Pan-Armenian Network States, targeting the Armenian diaspora. Because I do think that there is a huge opportunity in diasporas to be exercised, and it was 2021 when I founded Pan-Armenian Network State. And it came from a very simple idea. How to connect the Armenian diaspora to the Armenian mainland together. So that the resources, the intellectual power can help each other so that we can have a better Armenian establishment. But then I did realize that the problem is even deeper than one could imagine. I mean, the problem is about the system and about the mentality people think, and that's one of the key reasons of the major pivot that we within the Armenian network state made. I mean, like before it was like something like a very Armenian project, but now we are apparently very global project. Just, I mean, also focusing on the Armenian component, because we do think that we should engage all diasporas definitely, and also anyone who is interested in the new establishments, like Patri mentioned about, I mean, trying new things, building new societies. Definitely, I can say that the nation states per se, they are living their last stage, I can say, and that was a good experiment for the last, I mean, 3-4 centuries. But now we are seeing a new era, and as I said, it's an era of civilizational transition. Also, I mean, we are seeing an interesting era of projects like big, I mean, universal project like transhumanism versus humanism or whatever. So we are here now, and we need to position ourselves clearly. I mean, where we want to be and how we want to move the societies forward, and how or what type of societies we want to build. The network states and actually the virtual states themselves, I think that one of the biggest challenges that the network states and virtual states face is the land issue. The land issue, I mean, the place where you need to position yourself, and where, in the end of the day, your society, your people are going to live. So that's one of the key things. And we had actually a couple of weeks ago, we had a webinar on this topic. I mean, how to address this issue. But also the other thing that this new movement, because I think that we are, though with different perspectives, we are covering the same topic in the end of the day, the same universal topic. How we are going to exercise, I mean, to make the societies moving, and that's about the power. I mean, whether it's a decentralized power or it's a, I don't know, hierarchical power or whatever, because there are also some new establishments who have hierarchic organization, which is also interesting to understand what these people are trying to build. But in the end of the day, I must say that the diasporas are going to play a very big role in the 21st century. And the Armenian diaspora in particular, in my opinion, because I have been working with them for many years, because of the globalization effect that we are seeing and that we have been seeing, and because of the people's movement, huge and with huge numbers, we kind of we kind of see a new paradigm in nation state architecture. Like, I mean, we see a lot of non-core nation people in that society, which means that everywhere already in every country we are seeing a newborn diaspora. So what I mean is that the diasporas are going to be decision makers in many societies. So that means that we need to find a way to exercise their power, to kind of link people together so that their voice can be heard. Because people, for example, let's take an Armenian example. I lived in Canada, I lived in the US, I even lived in Colombia and Ecuador, just for your info. So imagine I'm living in Toronto, Canada, but I'm more linked to an Armenian establishment, right? I mean, so there should be a linkage, I mean, within the Armenian community, so that I can I can reach a level of self-governance or whatever, because that is more more familiar to me, more beautiful to me. I mean, it's just not about Armenian example. In general, I'm talking, just giving an Armenian example. So this comes to say that we are building new identities. Like, this is the most important thing, because the identity is a key to community building, whether it's based on ethnicity, in Armenian case, right? It based on religion or whatever, but still identity is one of the key things to move the society forward. And we have reached a level where I mean, within the Pan-Armenian network said that we have already built some organizational structure. So we kind of already run some projects globally. But in the end of the day, I think that we need, I always say this in all meetings, in all webinars, in all conferences regarding networks, we need a coordinated action. We need a coordinated global action vis-a-vis the nation states, vis-a-vis the current establishment. If we happen to be successful to build a coordinated, organized organizational structure, whether it is a I don't know, United Network States or whatever, a virtual state or whatever, I mean, the way we call it. So this needs to be to represent millions of people, and this structure needs to talk to the current establishment. So the current establishment, current power institutions have to accept it as a fact, as a fait accompli, like, I mean, people say, right? So this is one of my goals, actually, how to coordinate, how to build a coordinated action group, so that the current establishment institutions have to talk with us. Otherwise, we are going to have a longer and harder way. This way, I think, it is easier and simpler. And I am working with many other network states, and of course, new societies, definitely, because as I said, we are covering the same topic, maybe with different paths, but the same topic. In the end of the day, we're covering the same universal topic. So what I would suggest and call, actually, is that I would be very happy if we, in the end of the day, we create a coordinated action group, which will be a very political entity. This is very important. So political entity to exercise new politics of the 21st century. And I personally will be very happy to take part in it. So thank you. And if any questions, I mean, I'm here.
Yes, we don't close the panel yet, and I hope we'll have a second round. And there are some amazing questions in the chat already, so please stay with us longer, and please pose your questions too. But I'd like to engage our third panelist, Alex Tveit. Alex, you already shared some of your work on AI earlier today, and if you can share your thinking around the potential of network state in the areas of work where you are working. You're working a lot with sustainability issues and challenges around solving climate crisis, biodiversity loss crisis. So this type of work, I mentioned in the opening that potentially virtual states can actually bring that coordinated action towards global issues better than maybe some other entities. And Bahram just illustrated the issue of tapping into potential of diaspora. I think this is a beautiful example. What do you think about the potential of addressing sustainability issues?
Yeah, and I'll try and keep it concise because I would love to have an interactive part before we close as well. But maybe I'll take a short step back and explain how we work and how that relates to being interested in virtual states. So I work through a nonprofit called Sustainable Impact Foundation. I also work with community foundations in Canada, both here in Canada and nationally around community foundations. We really look at how do we decentralize our ability to innovate, focusing on breaking down borders and barriers to knowledge share and collaborate across sectors, across borders. really with the understanding that unless we decentralize our ability to innovate, we will not be able to tackle local, regional, and global challenges. If we centralize, whether or not to be in the Silicon Valleys or Torontos, if we centralize our ability to innovate, we're taking people away from being immersed in the challenges that we need them to be immersed in. So we need to support ecosystems for innovation. Through that work, we take a systems lens, but really making sure that we using Tatiana Frazier's words, we scale deep to really have a focus on co-creating initiatives with partners and really seeing how systems are interconnected and how do we step outside of silos to become less fragmented. So we really do that through looking at the overall health of an ecosystem, but taking a deep look at complex social issues, for example, such as digital equity, drug crisis, education, affordable housing, really looking at them as obstacles or deterrents for any type of inclusion into innovation. So it's all about how do we provide the resources and health of the full system. I mentioned earlier that technology has a huge role to play in this interconnected system. So through, for instance, having a leadership role at March Discovery District, where we look at tech and AI stewardship, recognizing that technology is not neutral. Often they create or perpetuate inequalities. And a lot of my work through that is really having a balanced conversation that transcends the tug-of-war between techno-optimism and techno-pessimism, really pushing and bending technology towards good. And related to that, we have a big focus on philanthropy and AI, and both here in Canada through Community Foundations of Canada, but also through co-creating initiatives, for instance, with Social Innovation Exchange in the UK, where we look at how can we move philanthropy and the communities that they serve from being takers of technology to really having their voice heard and amplified on the challenge and barrier side, but equally important on the use case for opportunities. And that's where the tie-in to really virtual states that I see the possibility to transcend borders and obstacles, to understand how we can knowledge share, collaborate better internationally, how we can move to really be governed by, and a lot of great thinking has been shared early today around how we can use them as tools to have these empowerments be systematized, but also realizing what does that mean for our ability to knowledge share, tackle problems together, being vocal as a group. And I want to also reference how important it can be to look at it as a tool for instance, in Alexander, you mentioned in your paper this as a tool to look at supports for refugees. And that's obviously an issue today. But as we're looking at climate change and we will be looking at displacements of people at numbers they're so staggering, we do not understand how to deal with them. Similarly, how can the virtual states be tools for communities of people, for instance, in Africa or indigenous peoples in North America, where boundaries of countries and regions were artificially created across ethnic, cultural, historical ties. So how can this actually virtual states be looked at to provide communities for people that straddles nation states and really amplify their voice as a collective? So lots of interesting things that kind of, while I'm by no means an expert on virtual states, I'm very intrigued by how that through different governance systems, a use of technology in a positive way, looking at AI, looking at DAOs, looking at blockchain, looking at immersive technologies like AI, VR, for instance, to create not only virtual states, but potentially virtual worlds where people can grow their interrelational networking or weaving, and bringing people, not having technology bring people separating, like what has happened with social media, but how can we actually use it beneficially and be mature enough to understand how it can actually bring us closer together? And I'm excited about it, but I'm equally a realist that if we do not provide inclusion into having these conversations and how we're developing and deploying technology, it will perpetuate and widen social inequalities, like I mentioned earlier. So how do we bring these conversations around virtual states and equally bring inclusion into a conversation around technology? So thank you.
That's a great point, Alex. And I'd like to actually connect this and something that was also discussed in the chat and get back to Patri. So Patri, on one hand, I think what we are discussing is like this very interesting gameplay, let's say, between enthusiasts that are really pulling us forward into a potential future which can really benefit maybe many of us, if not all of us, but at the same time going also into zone of risky experiments, and maybe experiments that many people would rather not be participating in. So that's one part of what you're describing. At the same time, what people are discussing in the chat are two zones of risks. So one zone of risk is the response from more traditional states. They see this kind of experiments as potential disruption of their sovereignty. And there, Jim actually wrote that nation states could be particularly sticky and paranoid about ideas of national sovereignty and national security. So on one hand, we have this risk of nation states kind of jeopardizing that. But on the other hand,
they might try to kill people even. They might charge them with a capital crime of treason and hunt them in Thailand. And the people might have to go into hiding and make a daring escape by boat to Singapore and then move to Panama. Just might happen. Thailand might send a navy, destroy their seastead. Just spitballing here about memories from 2019.
So that on one hand happens. So the response from nation states. On the other hand, the general population, let's say, and especially people that are, let's say, underprivileged, also would see this as Jan Hurwicz expressed, the bunch of crazy foreigners doing say crazy experiment out there on the island, which probably will create some kind of response from this group of population. And Alex just highlighted that the inclusion of society is really important in this experience. So how do you kind of see virtual states, let's say, playing this game of balancing so many diverse, really contradictory interests?
Sure. I mean, on the like sovereignty and threat thing, so some of the things that have happened, I just mentioned this Thailand incident with Ocean Builders, where these seasteaders, they were just testing an engineering design that a spar seastead that I first designed like over 20 years ago. But as seasteaders, they talked about wanting to live sovereign on the high seas, and they gotten permission from the Thai Maritime Authority. But when the Thai Navy heard about this, they were like, whoa, whoa. And not just that, but Thailand is on the South China Sea, and these Ocean Builders are actually on the other coast, but still, like a country on the South China Sea, you don't like build stuff and talk about sovereignty, right? So Thailand charged them with treason, which is a capital crime, and created Operation Seastead. They sent 3 Navy boats and like 100 naval personnel, and luckily, Chad and Nadia, they got word. They saw the government spy planes, I think. They went into hiding. They were able to successfully hide and make a daring escape a week by boat without enough supplies. Malaysia wouldn't even let them resupply. They were like, Thailand says you guys are bad. You can't even get water and gas here. So it was a whole adventure. And luckily they survived, but it made it clear that this can be life and death. This is serious stuff. In Honduras, a company in the late 2010s took some of my language about city states and stuff that kind of from something like where like my long-term goal is starting new countries, right? But a charter city is not a new country. It is under the sovereignty of the host country. And they had some language that suggested they were building like city states inside Honduras, and Honduras got really mad and, issued a statement saying we have nothing to do with these people. I looked into maybe criminal charges a little bit, but nothing happened. So it's really, really important. It's a little bit tricky for me, right? Because I want to be spreading this big vision of starting new countries. At the same time, the stage we're at right now, this halfway point, is working with host countries. And of course they're very sensitive. And so, I both in my own language and trying to like police others who aren't working with governments, right? The people who are working with governments understand to just be really clear that like we are within the host country, we are following their constitution, we only operate within programs that they choose to create. So yeah, you do have to be really careful. I think as far as like other countries considering us a threat, I mean, this movement is just so small. These are really small real estate developments at this point. I think in most cases, they don't really care. I've generally seen positive reactions from larger powers, whether it's in Europe, kind of being in favor of the charter city work in Africa, or here, like the reaction of the U.S. State Department to the Honduras projects. They just see it as something that can bring more security to the region, and they're in favor of that. I mean, there's this incredible like human interest and in the favor of big country story here about addressing the migration crisis, right? People are leaving for economic opportunity because the institutions and legal system work better in the global north. They have lower corruption and better functioning institutions. If we can bring those institutions to the global south, then people don't have to leave their homelands. They can have economic opportunity by just moving to a different city within their country. So that's an incredible humanitarian cause. It's something that countries like the US and Europe are massively in favor of. So we are a solution to their problem. And yeah, I would like to someday challenge the United States, 60 years from now or something with a network of charter cities and Neo-Hanseatic League for being biggest in the world. Yeah, that would be awesome. But, we're not even on their radar. About the inclusion stuff, I have a completely different perspective here. And again, this metaphor of government as a business, it's really deep. It's not just like a cool metaphor. Like, I think about markets and customers, and so sure, there's like luxury customers. There's like rich people you could try to design cities for, and yeah, maybe they would pay more because they're rich, but also now you're competing with like New York and London and Singapore, right, to get people to move there. That's really hard. And people who are dissatisfied with where they live, who want better jobs, like that's a massive, massive market. So, even though what I'm in this for is I want to make brand new political systems that are like radically better for like me to live in with a bunch of like nomads and like my tribe, right? That's what I'm in it for the long term. Bread and butter is like, let's just bring well-functioning institutions and courts to the global south and bring prosperity and end poverty and stop migration. Like that is mostly what I work on. So, I'm really targeted on a specific way of helping them. But I guess I want to emphasize like, look, I'm open to a pitch for investment from any design of governance, right? I have my preferences and my beliefs about what works, but you can pitch me anything. That said, I'm really into this private governance, this model of like Steve Jobs never asked me how to design an iPhone. And if he had, it would have wasted his time and made a worse iPhone. So when these societies are businesses, you have people who specialize in designing legal systems, who specialize in designing urban experiences, creating it. And the way that it's exit versus voice. It's not that you have influence because you're included and you have a seat at the table and you have a representative. Like you can do your cities that way if you want. I think that crap doesn't work. That's the old crap I want to get away from, to be honest. And instead, what it is if you don't like how the city is designed and run, don't move here. We're starting on empty land. This is a key difference here. We're not changing political systems on top of people, right? I look at like communism in China and the USSR, it's because it was done on top of people and they couldn't leave. Right? If that had been tested in small societies that were grown up, I think it would have worked up to, I don't know, 100,000 people. I think not over 1 million, somewhere in that 10,000 to 1 million person range. I think small communist societies probably would have worked. And then it would have gone to hell as they got too big and the price calculation problems got too bad, and it wouldn't have been scaled up anymore. But bad stuff happened because it was done on top of people. So, in my world, in my philosophy, you don't get included. You don't have a voice because like I like, when I'm wearing the hat of a customer, like with that hat, I'm not a designer of cities. I'm not a legal system designer. And so it's this whole different structure where like, you go to the supermarket and you choose which foods to buy. You choose what car to buy. You choose from different service providers who are competing for you, and they try to do a good job for you because they want your business. And it's really, really hard, I think, for most people to wrap their heads around viewing government like that. But I think it's incredibly psychologically freeing. Like the emotions that I feel from like my country is implementing my values, and it's like right or wrong, and they're like doing like it wrong. I don't like what they're doing. It's like When I'm just like, you know what? As a customer of governance, I'm frustrated. Like the businesses all suck. Like why are they so bad? I get so much better service from the private sector. It's like, oh, that's kind of annoying, but I don't have my like blood pressure escalating. So it's a different way of thinking. And just look, at the end of the day, I hope that people can set aside their beliefs and be like, where do we get better results from the private sector or the public sector? And if you can see like, wait, we get way, way better results in the private sector, and be open to the possibility of doing it in a really different way. That's like, I mean, it's not just anti-inclusivity of certain groups or the historically disenfranchised. I'm anti-inclusivity of everyone. Sorry, you all get included as customers, but you don't get a voice. You're not the ones running the company, running the city. So that's my vision, and we'll try it out with the people who like it, and the people who won't will do their own cities their own ways, and that's what it's all about.
Let 1,000 flowers bloom, in a way.
Yes, let 1,000 nations bloom, and 1,000 types of country contend.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. And also, as you mentioned about the migration issue and due to economic possibilities in the global north, I have a question for Mr. Ayvazyan in terms of there is a problem with migration now, and I mean, not only due to economic reasons, and as of latest calculations, there's 120 million people displaced. And my question is, in your opinion and through your work, how do you think your project and in future virtual states can help solve this issue?
Maybe he needs to be unmuted.
Okay, thanks a lot for the question, Alex. We must also take into account that migrations, unfortunately, nowadays and back in the 19th, 20th centuries, didn't happen just for economic perspectives, but also for genocides and for wars and everything. So basically, what I'm saying is that I do think that these new establishments, whether we call them network states, virtual states, charter cities, or whatever way we call them, or whether we build different types of new establishments, these new actual establishments are more of a necessity than a luxury. So this is very important to stress. I mean, people. There are a lot of people who have to leave or have to escape the places they are living in, even nowadays. I mean, like in September last year, we had this type of scenario in Artsakh, which in international language relations is used to be called Nagorno-Karabakh. I mean, 120,000 people had to flee Nagorno-Karabakh because of Azeri aggression and Azeri genocide, right? Azerbaijani genocide. Just since September last year, so very close. So basically, there are a lot of examples. Like, I mean, Armenian example is the case I have been studying a lot. But of course, we can recall a lot of cases like this. So that's why when I say, I mean, building these establishments, these new establishments must be heavens for this type of people. So we need to give, like, open the doors to these people. So these people can come and find this safe haven there. And that's why, again, I am coming back to the land issue, whether we build, I mean, from scratch, or whether we build even land, I mean, in the ocean, I mean, or whether we do something else. This is one of the key issues. I think that that this needs to be a very, I don't want to say it needs to be a very political movement, but it needs to it needs to cover this big politics, you know, because we are talking about millions of people who are suffering and who needs place and who needs new establishments to live in. That's one thing. The second thing is that we need to be a role model for the new generations. This is one of the most important things. This role model stuff, I mean, when you see, I mean, the same circle going on again and again, I mean, within the nation state. And suddenly, all of a sudden, on Earth, there is a place where there is something different. There is something else. So people will start looking to it. So this is one of the most important things. So kind of building a model where especially the young generation would strive to go to, would strive to be in. And that's why I still give very huge importance to identity. And the first, of course, when you say identity, first of all, people think about the ethnic identity, right? Ethnicity. But also, I mean, people who suffer, I mean, different people on earth suffer from the same causes. So they can also, I mean, identify themselves into the same group. And that's where you can build a huge movement, a huge army in a positive sense, not, I mean, a military army, I mean, right? This, the Armenian experiment is actually worth considering in terms of this Nagorno-Karabakh issue, of course, because people ended up in Armenia now, these people, most of them. But still, I mean, people, this land, I mean, historically belonged to Armenians, etc. So basically, if you build a new establishment and you build a new model, I mean, these people can find safe haven there. And also, what I want to say about this nation state versus the new establishments thing, because definitely, I mean, we are going to face a challenge from them, because that's a violation of their sovereignty, or whatever way you call it. Though Patri said about not being on radar yet, I want to share one very interesting news. A year ago or so, if I'm not mistaken, there's a military journal called Divergent Options. In the Divergent Options, an American acting military officer, this is very important, Pentagon acting military officer Bryce Johnston wrote an article that saying that in 2050, just some 26 years later, right, the United States Army is going to have a big war against a network state. And that network state will be so powerful that its army will be even in DC. So this is a very interesting, I mean, article in terms of an acting officer, because that's an acting officer who writes it. So you can just search Bryce Johnston, Divergent Options, so you can find it. So why I'm saying this is that definitely, I mean, the nation states are also trying to look into, to understand what is this new experiment, because they see that the nation state project is ending itself. Why it's ending? Because it's clear. I mean, you have internet, you have globalization, you have movement of goods, peoples, information, etc. So the way the map was organized doesn't work anymore. So that's why, I mean, this is the last stage of the network state. So it's very clear, and philosophically, it's very clear at least. So I think that identity, and also ethnic identity, is going to play a very big role in this century, and people will team up, I mean, based on ethnic identity, based on philosophical identity, how they, what their philosophy towards life is. And we are going to see a lot of new societies, new establishments very soon in our lifetime. Definitely, we are going to see, and we have a couple of examples actually now that are, I mean, moving towards that, but still. That's why I say it, and I'm repeating myself. If we happen to be successful in building a very big political entity, we definitely are going to shake the foundations of the current establishments worldwide. And I'm sure that we are on these people's radar, and some of them are afraid of us. Some of them definitely want to get gains from these movements, of course. But still, in the end of the day, we are going to make it, and I'm absolutely certain that the 21st century belongs to people who want to build new establishments.
I like this bold statement, Bahram. Wonderful. We are here in a way. And Alex, you've been expressing caution around these notions, and you suggested that we should also take care of like making sure we hear that, let's say, not create a world that will be more, let's say, opportunity rich than less opportunity rich in the future. And I guess Patri offers one perspective. You mentioned about like more intentional, inclusive work. So maybe you can elaborate on that, especially since there was a great comment in the chat around from one participant saying that maybe virtual states can become like an analog of the third way of non-attachment movement of the Cold War, but for the future. Do you think that can be the case, and what's your perspective of it? And then we'll open up the mic. I know their audience is hungry to give more comments. Please, Alex.
Yeah, and I know Jen had a comment as well, so I'll try to keep it very brief. I think we need to be humble enough to not believe that we know what is best. It's a very, very colonial way of thinking, and just simply like we have a housing crisis here in Canada. Like we don't know how to tackle it. We just had an amazing conversation with really restructuring apartments here as a village, which is actually in African or Rwandan concept of thinking, where we have structuring an apartment like a village, where we have intergenerational dialogue, where we have community centered in kitchen. If we believe that we have the solutions, look around us in our current global north systems. And when we stereotype even to the point of global north and global south, there's so much stereotyping there. There's so much generalization. We need to be humble enough in the work that we do, as well as if we're considering virtual states, we need those to be adaptive. We need them to be very values-based, not specific points in time. We need them to be adaptive and be inclusive to the diverse voices that we actually invite in, if they are value-based. Like if we're recreating hierarchical systems that we currently are sitting in now, we will recreate the problems. The virtual states won't be any different. The intention would be to center it around either knowledge sharing, collaboration, amplifying voices around the values that we're trying to push for. So similar to my conversation around technology is just a tool. It's a tool. It mirrors us. It mirrors our values. We shape technology, and technology shapes us. Similar, virtual states would be a tool. They will mirror whatever we create them as. They're only as useful as how we structure them. At least that's how I see them. So, but I'll digress there, and then I would love to hear other people's thoughts as well.
Thank you, Alex. Jan, I know you had a comment and you kept your hand risen, so please, perhaps you can comment on. You will need to unmute yourself. Yes.
Okay. Well, I think we should take a deep breath. Yeah. Okay. To complement what Alex is saying, and to bring in what Tom said on purpose. I have seen things go from 0 to negative numbers because I spent 5 years in Haiti. And in addition to many other countries. So I think what Patria is doing is wonderful. I can't wait to go and visit. But I know a lot about what's going on in Central America. So let's go for a minute to El Salvador, where President Bukele just won a majority with 80% of the vote. And he built the largest prison in Latin America and has 70,000 new gang members that he arrested and put there. So these countries, as Patrick is finding out, you know, they take their aggressive, violent work seriously. And the question, the issue, the challenge that we have as innovators is how do we bring in change, new ideas, new processes in a way that doesn't create too many waves so that we don't get too much backlash, so people don't get killed, and so that we don't lose credibility and the rest of the effort that's going on in the world to bring about change, because we're all part of a global team, and we're not just doing our thing, we're doing evolution for the greater good. And what my concern is, and I think this is a really good opportunity to dialogue about these initiatives. My concern is we lose credibility, and then somebody else who wants to try something says, "Oh no, that that and all those people, this is what happened to them." So that is my challenge to you, Patrick, and I challenge you with love. I respect your commitment. It's a rough road to bring change into different parts of the world. I've been doing it for a long time. But as Tom says, we should embrace the purpose, and we should embrace the purpose for the common good. And we should understand and be humble, as Alex says, be humble in the mission, be understanding that sometimes as foreigners, we can leap into another place, but the local people who work with us have to stay there, and sometimes they get killed. So that's another thing that we need to keep in mind. And I say it with love and blessings.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I feel the love in it, but I gotta say, ma'am, I'm here to make waves. So I think that's what's needed. I think trying to not offend, trying to act in a way where definitely won't crash and burn and bring bad reputation. I think we're way past that. I think we need radical change, and for me, what makes me feel safe about radical change is that my work is all totally opt-in, and so it's not radical change on top of people. It's not radical change of their systems, of where they live. It's empty areas and an invitation. If this looks like a better life, come check it out, come visit, maybe get a job here, and move in if you like it. And so that's, I think, why I feel safe about offering radical change. But it's true, it might blow up in certain places, and people aren't going to like that. I do like what you say about the like keeping in mind that people can die. I had my wake up call with that in 2019. Luckily, Chad and Nadia survived, but they might not have treason as a capital crime in Thailand that they were charged with. And we've seen other examples of charter cities. Paul Romer's work in Madagascar. He had the Korean electronics giant Daewoo was going to manufacture there. We're going to build a big charter city, and people found out about it, and they kind of reacted emotionally like this is like foreigners taking and selling our land. And they rioted. Several people died. They threw out the president, change of government, and that program was over. So, changing how we live together, it's serious work, and lives can be at stake. But look, lives are at stake from the old, bad, failing systems. And we got to do different things to find a way forward. But yeah, I really appreciate your feedback. And I can tell it comes from a lot of experience trying to make the world better.
Thank you. And I would like to welcome more perspectives from people who have been with us today. I'm sure there are lots of reactions, let's say, to what has been said today. There were quite a number of provocative statements. Bahram and Patri showing us this is the way, and it's a bold way. It's like Patri, you expressed, it's like making a wave. It's also a wave that maybe is not an easy one, and there'll be quite a lot of caution to keep in mind. So I'd like to welcome more people. Maybe please raise your hands if you'd like to comment, if you suggest what's your reaction, what's your response. Maybe you can share your cases of your work, that I know some people in the audience are doing similar work in different contexts with cities, with governments, with global change-making efforts. Alexander, I can see you're raising your hand, please.
Well, yeah, I just say a few things, kind of reminders. First of all, I'm so inspired, partly because there's so many Alex and Alexanders here. That's very inspirational. Very good. I'm speaking to you from Buenos Aires, Argentina, as if you can't tell, right? And one thing that I pick up on what Jan was saying, here in South America, the code that we have is deep, it's ancient. And these are the sort of things that can be picked up on. Even, I would say it's not quite the legal code, but it is the code of engagement with life when you dig a little deeper. Something called Buen Vivir. And Buen Vivir is pan-Latin American, or at least pan-South American. And this is this way of connecting not just with those things in the ecosystem that are nourishing for physical well-being, but all aspects of harmonious engagement. This is the kind of wisdom, knowledge, being that needs to be coded into our new states, our states of being. And it involves definitely a listening. Something, if we go chasing after the newest technologies and what they can offer, and how we become technology dependent, we become AI dependent, not AI enabled, right? Or technology dependent, not technology. And these are terms already in sociology. And so how do we do this in a way that we are in harmony with the evolutionary impulse? Because these are the deeper frames. Marilyn Hamilton talks often about how we are in mycelial networks, right? I mean, this is the way in which nature works. So learning these codes and in bringing them into our being, I think this is the biggest challenge here. And this involves something that Paolo put into the chat also, new paradigm politics. There's a whole book is based on that. Paolo made a reference to it in the chat as well. And things like not just leadership, but followership, right? We don't even have a word for that in Spanish. You can say liderazgo, but there's no such thing as seguidrazgo. It doesn't exist. How do we bring in these good leadership and good followership capacity, right? Because we require both in a healthy ecosystem. The fact is that the current system, like the United Nations, cannot work because it is founded on the idea that we can have a governance of sovereign nations. It's contradiction. Sovereign nations will not need to be governed by any super body because they are sovereign by definition. So this whole framework of sovereignty in the nation does not admit interdependence. And this is the ground state of our being. In our Western materialist capitalist frameworks, there's such a push for strident individualism and self-righteous independence that doesn't go well with this mycelial ways of being, with the buen vivir. We have to remember that none of us is as smart as all of us. And this is where I think AI comes in, because we're focusing then on different forms of intelligence. Not, there's natural intelligence, there's ecosystemic, there's evolutionary intelligence that Jan was alluding to. And AI represents, for me, augmented intelligence. Oh, amazing. But the question is how to engage in such ways as we've been discussing here, and Alex, who just left, was talking about really humanistic transhumanism. And Bahram was also mentioning this kind of orientation that is humanistic transhumanism, right? Otherwise, again, we become AI dependent and we jump on our technology horse and ride madly off in all directions. Doesn't work. Things we can experiment with radical new ideas, but it's not going to be guided by a deeper evolutionary understanding of the patterns which cohere. And I think that is the framework. And again, there are many different types of intelligences. Artificial intelligence is one of them. And the way in which we can bring this into our educational frameworks, Pavel, you're doing so much work on this with University for the Planet and other frames. We move from science, technology, engineering, and math to science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And then we add the R to make it not just STEM or STEAM, but STREAM. And that's science, technology, relational intelligence, engineering, arts, and math. And the relational intelligence component, learning not just these questions of collective intelligence, but connective intelligence as a ground state before collective intelligence, understanding what to connect with, who to connect with, what resources to connect with that augment our collective potential. This then can only be accomplished, I feel, by augmenting our empathetic intelligence. So it really means, again, listening into the deeper potential for thrivability of all the parts of the ecosystem. And so I just want to end with this idea that as I think it was Alex again, who just left, technology is crystallized culture, as one of my professors used to say. And it's not something out there that is acting upon us. It is us that we created, right? So it's nothing to be afraid of unless we're afraid of ourselves. And the way in which we can engage with this collective intelligence is a both-and frame. And I think Patri was referring to this kind of way that we don't have to give up our individual intelligence, our individuality, our individual identity, as Bahram was talking about. But we can have the both-and, have this sense that I am the ecosystem trying to protect itself, trying to thrive. And I'm also me. So there's not this sense of having to be disjunct. I think, again, that the key here is this humanistic transhumanism, and that we can really end up by engaging with this in such ways that listen into the deep patterns of thrivability that nature has embedded in us, but we have to listen better to how we can be these kind of vehicles and vectors for collective thrivability. That's my take. But again, for me, this is something that really is a listening exercise. And it's not just saying, hey, let's take the newest technology and do something radical with it. It's an ancient way, frankly, an ancient way of connecting with nature.
Thank you, Alexander. And indeed, I'm also very excited about the conversation we are having. I'd like maybe to invite a few more contributions, but what you just highlighted about the potential of human communities to learn together how to live differently also in recognizing that we are not only independent, but also interdependent, because one of the, let's say, elements of what connects us all is that we are all part of the earth, to me. And like this is what that's the truth we try to deny, but it's there. And 8 billion large population of humanity requires actually to learn to live in a different way. But I like this idea of creating pockets of opportunities. That's what I find really beautiful about the idea of virtual states, that they actually offer to create these pockets of opportunities to really radically rethink how we live together and how we do our work together.
Yeah, I
And
love this. For individual cities, even though I'm in favor of this much more executive, non-democratic, if I zoom out to all of the different ways that our entire community of humans is trying to find ways to live together, and new education systems and healthcare systems and social systems and ways of relating, I absolutely agree that we want to be sharing like a Christopher Alexander, like pattern languages for designing society. We want to have like open source repository. I mean, we have an open source repository of legal codes that we work on to share. I want to see open source repositories of all the different aspects of building society, so we can all do these experiments and learn and share the information. And then in my vision, eventually when you're starting a new community, rather than having to design parts of it from scratch, you're like a Linux distribution where you're like, here, I'm going to do this thing the way this community did it. I'm going to do this thing the way this, community in South America did it. I'm going to, do this thing from, the foothills of the Himalaya, right? And you design your society by combining these different modules that other people around the world have tested out. So, that's just what I think of when I hear what you're saying, Pavel. Like, we're all working together to learn new ways to live.
Fantastic. Maybe a couple of comments if there is somebody else from the audience who would like to share their work. Marilyn, you've been mentioned today a few times and you've been with us from the start. I'm really curious what's your thinking about. You work with networks of cities. You actually are doing the similar kind of work of transforming networks. So what's your perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Pavel, and thank you both, Alexander and Pavel, for hosting this session today. I knew I would be attracted to it, and I thought I wasn't going to be able to make the time, so I was so glad that I have been able to. You started out with the guest speaker of George Pure, and probably a year or so ago, George, who knew that my first book on integral cities was Evolutionary Intelligences for the Human Hive, he said, so what has that got to do with AI? And so I had to go away and think about that for a while. And I really said that basically, I don't think of artificial intelligence. I just think of amplified intelligences. And I see that the cities are fractals of both the human system and also of Gaia meeting in the middle. And I've been thinking a lot about the networks that are both mycelial networks, which we tend to think of as below the horizon, but also morphic fields. And I think that I've considered that cities are fruiting bodies of both those kinds of fields. And of course, as some people know, one has been developed in research by the father and the other by the son. So very interesting. I think Patri's ideas of seasteading, I have followed that sort of in the background for many, many years. So it's very nice to hear him speak directly about that. I said at the last chapter of my book, which was actually written of my first book, where I'm speaking about evolutionary intelligences, was actually written on a ship. And whenever anybody asks me, Marilyn, what would be your favorite city to live in the world, I always say a ship. Why? Because it gives me the whole world, not just one city. And I have always thought, since I did interview the captain of the ship that I was on, that ships gave us a very good focus of the basic functions of a city. And that really helps compress the challenges that we face there. But I also really relate to what Tom Thompson was saying. I'm a long-time user of holacracy. I live in the eco-village of Findhorn, and we've been using sociocracy, well, kind of like struggling with it. It is not a natural form of government for a bunch of anarchists, which I often have come to the conclusion are possibly attracted to live in eco-villages. So, but on the other hand, I'm living through a really powerful live action research experiment, because the eco-village of Findhorn is over 60 years old now and having to reinvent itself. That there's been a major life change as we've lost our major source of our economy and even possibly our purpose. But I do think there's some core principles here that have allowed us to continue to exist. So I really think it's powerful to focus on the power of purpose. The other thing I wanted to say, sort of related to the field perspective of cities, is that I don't think that they are simply bricks and mortar. I don't think they are just territory. Actually, I would maybe relent and say they're sacred territory. So if you step out of the usual ways that we communicate into the subtle realms, Gaia herself, if you accept that she is a living system, says that she, in experiences that I've had with using methods like systemic constellation work, she said that all the cities that we have were created long before humans turned up. Well, that's very interesting. And that kind of gets us a way to reframe what is it that we are contributing to the evolutionary life of the whole planet. So I think Pavel and Alexandra, you've opened up an enormously powerful conversation. I could have said that I was the founder of Integral City Meshworks, but I put out Living Cities Earth, of which I'm a co-founder. And today I'm getting maybe a reframing of even that organization. Maybe we should be rethinking this as a virtual city. I've been talking about using some of the ways we've been looking at who we are as the people who've turned up as a proxy city, but maybe a virtual city would be much more relevant. And many of our co-founders are living in different diasporas. So I think that too is really, really interesting, and that we are benefiting from, I think, the best and the brightest who have left their home nations and are living in a diaspora now. And beyond the four voices that I look at in the city, there's definitely the voice of the nomad now. And that nomad is tapping into ways of connecting that are non-local and interconnected with all living systems on Earth. Yeah, so those are just a few of my thoughts, Pavel and Alexander, and all of the speakers today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we are approaching wonderful perspective, Marilyn, a lot to think about. By the way, there was a comment from Andrew, I think, in the chat, giving a link to a group of active independent city country founders. So maybe some of you will be interested to explore that. Before we close, I'd like to maybe invite intentionally one more contributor, Kara, who works on some large-scale change work with experiments in Colombia and some other places. So Kara, you are creating the networks that try to make this kind of alternative ways of living with large-scale transformation and inclusion of different populations, including indigenous population. And you've been with us from the start. Hearing the opportunities that virtual cities offer, do you think it will match with your work on large-scale network-based social change that you try to instigate?
Yeah, when I envision this new way of life coming through us, I do see us in cities. Like I see us in like these condo buildings that are within existing cities, and that we're having this choice. We're giving people, especially these conscious co-creator people, is sort of who we're focusing on first, that if we can enliven and give the people who want to be these conscious social change creators, give them this choice to really fully be that, fully do that, and be connected globally through all these eco-village networks and all.
I think there's some problem with your microphone, Kara. Your mic muffled. Can you hear us?
Becoming that. And so focusing on these social change agents, making us really vibrant and thriving together, then we can create better systems together that can then we can build the systems so well and fund them really well so that they really work, because they're struggling. Like Seeds is struggling. They need their Haifa is almost there, creating this kind of these systems for holacracy, but they all need a few hundred more thousands and millions of dollars over the next few years. But what can we do? Can we work together to build up those companies, build up some simple companies to make a lot of money, to give it to those co-creators so they create those systems so we can scale up our work into the world? And can we work together to tell the story of the change we're creating as conscious governance and ecology leaders, to pull in more and more funds, and feed that out to the people on the ground who are already doing the really great work and need it, give some to Findhorn so they can help them get over their crisis point. And can we be these great storytellers together, and can we become this virtual global eco-village? And I feel like I think we can opt into it and give each other a lot of services and care and support like a nation. And I think we can sort of reduce the amount of income that we have to pay taxes on, still be in the laws and pay the taxes, but just reduce it in such a way that it's not a bigger portion. And the bigger portion is all the value and contribution that we're giving to this conscious system. And we feed it up so that we can do the big infrastructure work that this consciousness movement needs. So, so if we can really become love organized, I think we can change the world.
Can I intervene for just Pavel? Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
Cara, I'm very interested.
Yeah, please. We're wrapping up, please. Mm-hmm.
Yes, just very interested in you mentioned, Pavel, that Cara is doing work in Colombia. I lived in Colombia for 2 years. I had connections with the Colombian government. So I would like to hear more. Maybe, we will have a follow-up meeting together, Cara. But just would like to hear more. Just wanted to mention that I'm very interested in your work in Colombia in particular. Thank you.
That's more my partner, Felipe, who was here earlier. He lives in Colombia, and they're in the Barichara area working on some bioregional work and that sort of thing. So I don't have the depth as much there, but we are the Gaia Hub network is sort of starting there, but it's more focused on being virtual and global. So it's not. Sorry, I don't have so much to comment there.
Okay, thank you. We are at the very final moments of conference, and I feel like the conversation actually is very rich. It could continue, a lot to explore. Thank you, Bahram, for making one of the bridges that hopefully would work for further collaborations. And now maybe we are just saying a few concluding words, Alexander and I. So on my behalf, I would like to thank everyone who has been with us today, who has been presenting, who has been sharing their thoughts, who has been listening. In one other event that I have organized with some colleagues present here, we use the notion of keynote listeners. It's a very important role of being there to listen through the whole thing and responding and paying attention. So we together created, I think, an attention field to really advance this idea of virtual states further. And the links that have been shared today hopefully will inspire some of this work and future collaborations. Thank you very much. It's not the end of conversation, it's only the beginning. Alexander, to you.
Well, I just want to start off by saying thank you for everybody being present, not only the speakers, but just the participants. Everybody was so engaged in the conversation, and I see that there's so much passion behind all the projects, and that there is definitely work to do and space to move to. But I feel this inspired, and I think I know in which direction to move, and I just want to say thank you to all of you for giving your comments and educating me, I would say. So I feel very honored to be in this conference, and yes, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great end of the day, and let us see how the future unfolds, but hopefully we'll see more of opportunities coming through these innovations. And let it be love organized, as Cara expressed. I think it's a beautiful way of putting it. Peace and love to everyone.